Okay, so I'm recording a quick guide on how to combine a bunch of materials. There was a video on this in the old version of Ultibake, but it kind of became obsolete. So I'm updating it now. So to do this justice, I will enable Sketchfab and we will download this scene. It has a lot of objects and a lot of materials, so it's like the perfect way to show this. So let's say you have this kind of situation where you have a bunch of objects and all of the objects have either one material per object or even multiple materials per object. And let's say you want to export this to your game engine or whatever. It would be very difficult because then you would have to recreate every single material one by one. And this can be like hours and hours of work. And, you know, you don't want to do that. So instead, what you can do is you can bake everything into a single material and just have all of the FBX files use the same material, basically. And it will just work. It's pretty simple to do. Once you have your objects, you just make a bake set, you set the collection, and then you go into the UV visualizer. And you will see that, oh, we have some overlap, and that's expected, because if we look at the UVs, we can see that every single object has unique UVs. And of course, if we combine this, there's going to be some overlap. And the number one rule about baking is that you can't have overlapping UVs unless they are identical. Like, let's say you have a tree with like thousands of leaves. That's the one edge case where you can just stack the UVs, because it will just use the same texture for all of them. But otherwise, you don't want stacked UVs. So I think this is an unused UV, so we can just delete this. If you don't see the UV tools, you have to scroll down to the UV tools in the settings and just enable this, and it will appear. So the first thing you should do with the UVs is make a new UV set. So let's call this UV bake. And this will affect your selected bake set. So make sure this is selected, and then whatever you do here will affect all of the objects. We can see there's 47 and it matches. So we know that this is the correct one. And then we should do some pre-processing. So let's select all the objects and do merge by distance, because I know there is some like bad topology with this asset pack, but normally you wouldn't have to do that. And then you can just unwrap. I'm going to use the MOF unwrapper. If you install this add-on called MOF, I will put it in the description. If you do the installation guide for that add-on, you will see this in the drop-down menu. And this is a better unwrapper, basically, for Blender. So that's why I'm using that. You can also check the texel density. So we want to have the texel density to be pretty much the same throughout the whole asset pack here. So we have to make sure we actually have the correct UV selected. Yeah, we did. And now we can unwrap it. And now if we click the refresh button, we will see that, oh, everything is red. And if we go into edit mode, we can see that our textile density is 64. Now we can get a lot higher by increasing the resolution. So let's go to 4K. And let's check it again. So now we should get 256. And if we set the target to this and we refresh, everything should become green. So now we're good. So you can also double check it by clicking this sync button, and it will basically select everything for you and make sure the correct UV is selected for every single object, because that is very tedious. So it looks pretty good. But you can get a bit better results if you use something like UV Packmaster. You just have to make sure the margin And the texture size is correct. So this is 4K, and we're gonna go for 16 pixels. So let's we are 256 on which of these models? Yeah, 256. Let's see if we can get anything better. Oh, and let's make sure everything is selected before we pack. And if you use something like UV Pack Master, anything that approaches 0.8 is very good. So we're at 0.74, which is, I'd say, acceptable. Let's give it one more iteration. Or maybe not. I don't think it can find. This is the best you can do. It got a bit slightly better there at the end, but this is good enough. 256 texture density is more than enough. So once you're at this step, you can just hit bake. And sometimes if you do 4K, it's gonna be a long bake. It might take like 5 minutes. So make sure you set the timeout period to like 10 minutes. Otherwise it will crash midway. And if you look at the crash logs, it will say timeout or something. So that's the fix for that issue. So let's bake. And if you see this many bake jobs, that usually means it's a bit too much. So let's cancel it. I forgot to enable the fast mode. And you always want to use fast mode when you're working with this many objects. Thankfully, we can cancel it. And let's try that again. So now we just get 4, which is the ideal result. One more thing. Since we're baking ambient occlusion, because we're baking ORM, and O is the occlusion, we have to make sure that everything is spaced out. Otherwise, the AO contribution will affect the carpet, for example, and we'll get like spots on the floor. So the easiest way to do that is to first get rid of the empties. You can manually go and delete these if you want, but if you have the Ulti tools, you can just click this realize button, and it's gonna clean everything out. And now just to do affect only locations, and then you can scale everything to space everything out. And let's move the carpet here, and let's hide this visualization thing so it doesn't get in our way. And everything is spaced out, so no AO issues should happen now. So now we can finally bake. I'm gonna freeze it as well. Okay, it's done baking, and now we can finalize. So let's select everything in our collection and just move it up. And as we can see, the quality is very good because we were watching the texel density. And this is the workflow I'd recommend, not just for combining a lot of materials into this single atlas. Or I don't know if it's called an atlas because it's a mess. You can't really utilize parts here. Well, you can technically. I guess technically it's an atlas. But this workflow works for everything basically. More specifically, the texel density stuff. You should always check this, regardless of what you're trying to bake. But yeah, that's it for the tutorial. Hopefully this helps, and see you next time.